Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to talk about a company that is, it's like the invisible nervous system of the entire healthcare industry.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
If you've ever had a checkup, if you've ever been sick, you have almost certainly dealt with them.
That's no exaggeration. They are literally everywhere.
We are, of course, talking about Labcorp. And I think for most people, the mental image of Labcorp is pretty specific.
hmm
It's a beige waiting room, there's a TV in the corner playing some cooking show on mute,
Right.
and you're waiting 20 minutes to get a needle in your arm to check your cholesterol.
It's sort of the necessary evil of healthcare logistics.
Exactly. But we have a stack of documents here today. The Q4 2025 earnings report, the transcript from the earnings call this morning, February 17th, 2026, and their slide deck.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, if you still think of Labcorp as just the blood draw, guys, you are missing a massive pivot happening under the hood.
You really are. The Labcorp of 2026 is it's positioning itself less like a logistics company and more like a high-tech science platform.
Right.
We're seeing data on AI-powered pathology, massive global clinical trials, and honestly, some serious moves in Alzheimer's testing that could change everything.
So here's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to figure out if that pivot is actually working. Because on the surface, this is a legacy company trying to reinvent itself. We need to unpack the financials and see if they're making money or if it's all just flashy presentation slides.
And honestly, the answer is a bit complicated. It's not a perfectly smooth ride.
Okay, let's start right there with the numbers, the headline financials. They felt like a mixed signal to me.
They really did. It's a classic top line versus bottom line debate.
So depending on what you look at, it was either a great quarter or kind of a disappointing one.
Exactly. Let's start with revenue, the top line. For Q4 2025, Labcorp brought in $3.52 billion.
Okay, which is up from last year.
It is, up 5.6% year over year.
Which is decent growth.
Right.
Huh?
Wall Street analysts had a number in their heads, and Labcorp actually missed that consensus by about $44 million.
Ah, okay. So they sold a little less than the market hoped they would.
Right. The sales engine sputtered just a tiny bit.
But then you look at the profit, the adjusted EPS, and they hit $4.07. That beat expectations by 12 cents.
It did.
So help me square that circle. How do you sell less than expected but make more profit than expected?
It all comes down to margins. This is the discipline part of the story.
Okay.
Even though revenue is a little soft, they managed to expand their enterprise operating margin by 120 basis points.
I want to pause there because basis points is one of those finance terms. What does that actually mean in the real world?
Sure. So a basis point is just 1/100th of a percent. 100 basis points is 1%. So we're talking about a 1.2% improvement.
Which sounds tiny.
It sounds tiny, but when you're dealing with billions in revenue, widening your profit margin by over 1% is massive. It's millions and millions of dollars.
It's like finding money in the couch cushions.
Basically, yeah. It means they're keeping more pennies of every dollar they earn. They've been very aggressive with cost cutting, something they call their Launchpad initiative.
So they're squeezing more juice from the orange, even if the orange itself didn't grow as much as people wanted?
That's a perfect analogy. And if you zoom out to the full year 2025, the story holds. Revenue up 7%, EPS up 13%.
And they generated a ton of cash.
A ton. Nearly $500 million in free cash flow just in this quarter.
Which is the fuel they need because their strategy is incredibly capital intensive. And that brings us to their first big pillar, what I'm calling the hospital land grab.
It really does feel like a land grab. The pace is intense.
The numbers are wild. In the last 3 years, they've closed deals with 13 different hospital systems. Why is this happening now? Why are hospitals suddenly just handing over the keys to their labs?
You have to look at the macro picture for hospitals. I mean, it is brutal out there right now. Labor costs are up, insurance reimbursements are tight, and running a high-tech lab is incredibly expensive and complex. It's not their core competency.
Right. Their job is treating sick people, not managing test tube logistics.
Exactly. So Labcorp walks in with a checkbook and says, we'll buy your lab, give you a big cash infusion right now, and we'll manage all your testing from now on.
It's a liquidity event for the hospital.
It is. And for Labcorp, it's a volume play. Every hospital they swallow up makes their entire network more efficient because lab testing is a scale game.
It feeds the beast. But speaking of volume, there was a weird little blip in this report. Total volume grew 2.2%, which is fine. But organic volume, so growth without buying companies, was only 1.1%. That seems kind of sluggish.
It is a bit soft. Management tried to explain it away, partly with the weather. A snowy Q4.
I guess that makes sense. I'm not driving on ice to get my cholesterol checked.
Me neither.
Yeah.
But they also dropped this little breadcrumb about a large consumer genetic client. They didn't name names.
So we're talking about the spit in a tube and find out where your ancestors are from kind of companies.
Exactly. Think of the 23andMe sector. That whole industry is facing major headwinds. They're struggling financially, so they're sending fewer samples to Labcorp for processing.
So Labcorp catches a cold because their partner has the flu.
In that one segment, yeah. But their point was, look, if you ignore the bad weather and that one client, our core business is actually growing just fine.
Okay, so that's the volume game. But the real money, the real excitement isn't in my potassium levels anymore. It's in the high-end stuff.
This is the big shift from volume to value. Routine tests are commodities. The esoteric or specialty testing is where the science and the profit is.
They launched over 130 new tests last year alone. I want to dig into a couple of these because they sound like science fiction. Let's start with oncology and this thing called MRD.
MRD, molecular residual disease. This is arguably the hottest area in cancer diagnostics.
Okay, explain it like I'm 5. How is this different from a normal CT scan?
All right, imagine a forest fire. Traditionally with cancer, we treat it, and then we wait to see the flames, the tumor, return on a scan.
Right.
But by the time you see a tumor, it's millions of cells. It's already a roaring fire.
And it's much harder to treat.
Much harder. MRD testing is it's like smelling the smoke from miles away.
Yeah.
It detects microscopic fragments of cancer DNA floating in the blood long before a tumor is visible.
So you can catch a recurrence months or even years earlier.
Sometimes years, yeah. And Labcorp just expanded this for breast, lung, and colon cancer. It lets doctors know if the surgery actually got everything. It's incredible.
That's personalized medicine actually happening. And then there's the neurology piece, the Alzheimer's test.
This one is huge for accessibility. Historically, to really confirm Alzheimer's pathology, you had two bad options. A PET scan, which is super expensive, or a spinal tap.
And I think we'd all prefer to avoid a needle in the spine if possible.
I certainly would. Labcorp has now launched the first FDA-cleared blood test for Alzheimer's that can be done in a primary care office.
Wait, so I go to my regular doctor for my physical, get a blood draw, and we can assess my risk right there.
Theoretically, yes. It democratizes the diagnosis. You can screen people at the GP level instead of sending everyone to a specialist.
Now, connect this back to the business strategy. Why does Labcorp love these tests so much? Is it just the high price tag?
The price tag is part of it, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's also what they call stickiness or pull-through.
A magnet effect.
Right. If you're a doctor and you have to use Labcorp for this cutting-edge Alzheimer's test, where are you going to send all that patient's other routine blood work?
To the same place. You're not going to make the patient go to 2 different labs.
Exactly. The specialty test anchors the whole relationship. It builds a defensive moat around their business.
That makes perfect sense.
Oh.
Okay, let's pivot to the other half of the company, biopharma services, helping drug companies run clinical trials.
And this report, it was really a tale of two very different businesses here. A total divergence.
You have central labs, which is booming, and early development, which is, well, it's shrinking.
Let's start with the winner. Central Labs revenue was up 11%. This is the logistics backbone of global clinical trials.
And their book-to-bill ratio was 1.1C. What does that tell us?
A book-to-bill over 1.0 means you're signing new contracts faster than you can finish the old ones. Your backlog of future work is growing. Business is good.
So good, they're building a new facility.
A massive one. A 500,000 square foot lab in Indiana just to handle the demand.
Wow. But then on the flip side, why is the early development side down 13.5%? That's a steep drop.
Early development is the really risky stuff. Toxicology, animal testing, the very first steps before a drug even gets near a human.
And that's sensitive to the broader economy.
Highly sensitive. Specifically to biotech funding. When interest rates were zero, venture capital firms were throwing money at every startup.
That's dried up now.
It has. So there are fewer startups running fewer early-stage experiments. Labcorp is exposed to that cycle.
And their response has been pretty ruthless.
It has. They're streamlining, which is corporate speak for closing sites and firing customers.
Firing customers.
Essentially, yeah. They identified about $50 million in annual revenue that just wasn't profitable enough, and they're walking away from it to boost their margins.
It's interesting to see a company that big willing to just cut off a limb to save the body.
It shows discipline.
Let's talk about the tech stack, because AI was sprinkled all over this call. Is it just buzzwords or is it real?
I think for once it's actually practical. Take the AI test finder.
which sounds like a Google search bar for doctors.
It kind of is. There are thousands of obscure tests. The AI helps a doctor find the exact right test in seconds, which often means they order the more specific, more expensive one.
So it drives revenue.
Correct. And then there's this partnership with Roche on automated mass spectrometry.
Okay, that sounds like something out of science fiction.
It used to be. Mass spectrometry basically weighs molecules to identify them. It's incredibly precise, but it's always been very manual, very slow.
So what changed?
Robots. Labcorp is the first U.S. lab to implement Roche's fully automated system. It means they can run these complex tests faster, cheaper, and with fewer errors.
The Industrial Revolution finally hits the biolab.
Pretty much.
And on the consumer side, we have Labcorp On Demand. I can just go online and order my own tests now.
Over 200 biomarkers. It's tapping into that quantified self movement. People want their own health data.
It's empowering, but it also feels a little bit like the Wild West. But before we get to that, what's the guidance for 2026? What are they telling us to expect?
Steady, boring growth, which is what you want from a company like this. Revenue up around 5%, EPS growth around 9%.
And massive cash flow?
Over $1.2 billion expected. So they'll have plenty of dry powder for more acquisitions.
But there is this shadow hanging over them. PA.
PMA. The Protecting Access to Medicare Act. It is the sword of Damocles for the entire lab industry.
This is the law that says how much Medicare pays for tests, right?
Yes. And the government has been threatening to slash those rates for years. Labcorp got a reprieve. The cuts were delayed again through the end of 2026.
So they're safe for this year, but they can't keep living year to year.
No. The CEO was very clear they are lobbying hard for the Results Act, which would fix this pricing mechanism permanently. They just need certainty.
It's amazing how much of the business is just, please don't hurt us, Congress.
It is a major risk. And speaking of risks, there is a leadership shakeup. The COO and the chief legal officer are both retiring on April 1st.
That's a lot of institutional knowledge walking out the door on the same day.
It is. The guy running the labs and the person fighting PAMA. It's significant. Something to watch.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. What's the big picture narrative here?
I think the narrative is the flywheel of data. They're using their massive scale, the hospital deals, the routine tests, to fund these high-growth engines.
So they're moving from a service company to an information company.
That's the goal. They want to sell insights, not just test results, and they're doing it with extreme financial discipline.
So here's my final thought for you to chew on. We talked about the Alzheimer's blood test, and we talked about Labcorp On Demand.
Right.
As these diagnostics get easier, a simple blood draw instead of a brain scan, and more accessible directly to us, the consumers. Are we moving toward a world where patients diagnose themselves before they ever step foot in a doctor's office?
It's a fascinating question. I mean, if you walk into your primary care appointment already holding a report that says you have a high probability of Alzheimer's, the entire power dynamic shifts.
You're not asking the doctor, what's wrong with me? You're asking, okay, what are we going to do about this?
And I would argue the healthcare system and the doctors are definitely not ready for that shift.
But companies like Labcorp are pushing us there, whether we're ready or not.
They absolutely are.
Something to think about the next time you're staring at that turned-off TV in the waiting room. That's it for this deep dive into Labcorp's 2025 Health Check. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.